in. If you are visiting with us, we're so glad that you're here this morning. I'm going to start with two questions. They kind of might be the same question, but I'm wondering if you can pick up a little of the difference with me. Which area of your life would you like to be more at peace? In which area of your life would you like to be more at peace? What's the difference? Anybody, when you read those two questions side by side, what's the difference? I see like a lot of mouths kind of speaking, but not actually. I can't hear you when you whisper. I asked you a question. Does anybody want to respond to me? I feel alone and isolated up here right now. No, really? What's the thought? In. Okay. And what does that change? How does the sentence structure actually change because of that one word? How does the question change? What's that piece? You or? An area. Yeah. So, what is the thing in which we're actually asking to be at peace? Which area of your life can be a thing, a context, a circumstance, a situation? When we say in which area of your life, through which area of life, why that area of life is happening, would you like to be more at peace? And I don't know about you, but the question I probably most ask often is the first one. Why can't this part of my life just be more at peace? Why can't this area just get better? Why can't this thing just go away? And the question becomes the context in which I find myself over and over and over again. I don't know about you, but no matter how many times I ask the question, things continue to happen in my life that are filled with chaos and hardship and challenge and things that I don't want. And so to ask that question over and over again, I don't think is a bad question. But then when we think about what we can do about that question, I start to feel a little bit hopeless. I start to feel maybe a little bit even at a lack of peace because it doesn't seem the things that I want to change actually change. Do you have an area in your life right now which you would like that thing to be more at peace? What area in your life right now do you want to find peace in? The other part of it is usually the things that aren't at peace. I find that if I try to fix them or make them go the way I think they should go, they don't always get better. Oftentimes it actually gets worse, and or I get worse, get more frustrated. Right? The things aren't changing in the way that I think they should, so then now I need to try and change it more or correct it more. And then I become more tired, become more stressed, become more worried. So very quickly, I'd offer to us this morning that this question really matters. And that as we find ourselves in life asking this question over and over again, and you don't always say it, you don't actually say out loud, I just wish I was more at peace. What you do say is, man, I'm just so tired. I'm just so frustrated. Man, I just wish that this thing would just be over. We say it 100 different ways over and over again throughout the days and the weeks, and I think what we're actually asking is, can these things actually be set right? Can they actually be the way in which they were supposed to be? Because if they were supposed to be a different way, that's how we know that we were designed for something different. If things were always chaotic and hectic, then if we weren't meant for something different, we would be fine when things are the worst. But you're not, are you? You don't like it. So it means that there's something inside of us that believes that things should be different. And so we're going to continue, and we'll wrap up tomorrow night the series we're in called The Missing Piece. We can feel like we're missing peace in so many ways, and we would say today that in the Christian tradition, in the life, the death, the resurrection of Jesus, that there's actually a peace that could be within reach. The challenge with that is there are many ways in which we can reach for peace. There are many ways at our fingertips, more than ever, to actually try and soothe what feels off, what feels overwhelming, what feels broken. You know exactly what you tend to go to in your own life. I can go through a long list and help you imagine. But very quickly, there are ways in which you're trying to cope with the lack of peace in your life. From small ways to big ways, from private ways to public ways. We are trying to manage what is not right. We are trying to make better what is not right. And that's a valiant effort. There's things that we're trying to move through in this world to make sense of it because we want more peace, and it doesn't seem that the peace is there. But I would offer to us this morning that that peace is actually within reach. So what I'm going to do is actually turn to the scriptures, look back at an ancient text, 2,000 years old, that we're trying to make the best sense of 2,000 plus years later. And we're going to look at a moment. This might be a little bit confusing because in like a few days, we're celebrating like the birth of Jesus. He's this little 8-pound, 5-ounce baby that enters the world, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a text in which he's already he did this thing where he lived for a while and then he died and then he came back to life. We're going to be on that side of things. So not to confuse you, that's more like an Easter type thing, but we're going to jump ahead in the story a bit of what we're starting at tomorrow. It's like Benjamin Button, I guess. We're I don't know, something like that. So why don't we pause here for a moment? We're going to look through the text, and I want to point out three things. As we're reading this text, I want you to look and listen for three things: a refrain, a breath mint, and an inscription. A refrain, a breath mint, and an inscription. Let's see if you can pick them out as we read. So here we go, John 20. This is one of the Gospels in which accounts the life and story of Jesus. On the evening of the first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." This is just after Jesus has been arrested, brutally murdered, and we'll soon to know what's next. So they're standing there terrified. Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." And with that, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." Now, Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We've seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and this time Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." First, did anybody notice a refrain? Peace be with us. Intelligent group. Was that already up? Did you guys just cheat? Good. Peace be with you. 3 times Jesus came and stood among them in this very short passage and said, "Peace be with you." Again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you." He says it again. Jesus came and stood among them. Peace be with you. It seems that the author is trying to get us to see something. Trying to get us to see that Jesus believes that when he shows up through a wall or a locked door, I don't know if you guys caught that part, would you be terrified if you're just hanging out with your friends and all of a sudden someone just appears out of nowhere? All the doors and windows are locked. How did, he might be saying that just to be don't worry, it's okay. I'm not here to I don't know, steal from you or murder you. I don't know. That'd be terrifying. But he seems to be trying to offer them something. At a moment in their life which they might be at the most despair they've ever experienced. This is the group of people that for 3 years, at least in physical, have spent time with Jesus. He has been the one that has come into their life to try to make sense of the world. They have eaten with him, they have walked with him, they have prayed with him, they have experienced something in their life that they experienced nowhere else in their life to date. And then they saw that person arrested and brutally murdered. They also thought that he was there to take them from oppression, to overturn the boot of the Roman Empire. that he was going to overthrow everything in which they found themselves under. And yet, that conqueror king that they were hoping for was arrested and brutally murdered. Their world is turned upside down. And as they saw their government take the one in which has made most sense of their life, as they've taken him and murdered him, as they saw the religious leaders of the time betray him and turn him in, as they saw one of their own be the one to rat Jesus out for a bag of money, they're terrified because they're wondering, are they coming for us next? These are people whose lives are turned completely upside down, the most despair they've ever found themselves, and Jesus enters the room to say, peace be with you. You find yourself in any moments right now, things that are unwanted, things that don't make sense, things in which feels that your life might be turned upside down. I offer you this morning that Jesus is one who breaks in to the confines of your life and says, peace be with you. He sees you. He knows exactly where you're at. He knows exactly what you're going through, and he says, peace be with you. Next one, did anyone pick up a breath mint? Ooh, so it breathed on right before that. I don't know if you've ever been around anyone who's breathed on you. I try to avoid it. I also try to avoid breathing on people. So, like, you're always nervous if you have like bad breath or not, right? We do prayer in this church. We believe in praying for one another, that the things going on in our life is someone actually placing their hand on your shoulder, inviting God's presence. You know what disrupts that is bad breath. You're like, man, I just want to experience God's presence in my life, and this person clearly ate garlic for breakfast. It's like 10 a.m. How did they already have garlic? This doesn't make sense. In our prayer training, we literally encourage people to use breath mints and gum before we pray for people. Seriously, this is a way in which we can increase our effectiveness in prayer, because there's not many things more distracting than bad breath. And Jesus just breathes on them. Can I remind you of what he just went through? Like, his breath had to have been horrible. Like, I'm not kidding. This is a weird part of the text where I'm like, he just breathed on him. He just was like in a grave dead for a few days. That's like dead person breath. I haven't experienced that. Oftentimes, though, I don't know, maybe when you wake up someone else, you do think that they've died in their sleep. Anyways, I digress. This is like a very weird thing. It's not as weird to those that were sitting there that day, as what they could be reminded of goes all the way back to the beginning of creation in Genesis 2:7. Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. One of the things that Jesus is referred to oftentimes is the new Adam. He is the one to actually bring in what God originally intended in the garden that was found in Eden. Peace. The depth of the word peace is actually shalom, meaning wholeness, meaning the way that things are supposed to be, meaning that there are no tears, there are no worries, there are no fears. And there's something here in which God created through his breath, through the ruach, through the wind, through his spirit. And Jesus does something to say that I am not here just off of a whim. I am the one. I am God, and what I'm doing through what I have just done is to breathe new life into all of you. To breathe new life into his church, and through his breath, the deposit of the Spirit in which will make all things new, inside of us and around us. Very quickly, Jesus has just commissioned and actually given away everything that he was given so that this room of terrified people can actually join him in making all things new. The same Spirit in which is given to you and I. Not because of anything that we can do, but only because of what Jesus has done. Not because of our own works, but only because of his works. Not because of our rightness, but because of his rightness. It is a gift to be received, to be breathed on. To be breathed on. Jesus breathes on them for something more than what they found themselves terrified in that room of. Again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." With that, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." This idea of forgiveness is one of the things that got Jesus in trouble. Because he might go around healing people, but the moments he said, "Your sins are forgiven," the religious leaders said, "Who does he think he is? Only God can forgive sins." This was a political statement, let's be clear. And then he not only does it himself, but he asks you and I to join in the forgiveness that has been given already. The work that he did on the cross and in the tomb and in the power of the resurrection is so that you and I could be made right with a God who has been working towards us even while we were far off. Again, to be receiving of the things in which we could not do our own. Forgiveness and mercy. And then that is the thing that he points to say, as you go, if you want to keep making the world right with me the way in which I originally intended, may you go in the spirit of forgiveness which you have received so that you freely give, because it's been given freely to you. The Spirit has been given to you and I to do the work that brings all things to peace. Now, we know that there will continue to be brokenness. There'll continue to be separation. There'll continue to be things in this. But I would offer to you that this spirit of forgiveness is not just a transaction of I forgive you or you forgive me or I receive your forgiveness or whatever it is. Most would point to this and say that the deeper thing here is shalom. Can you and I actually carry the thing out that we can only do with the Spirit inside of us? Because I don't know about you, but on my own, I cannot forgive. On my own, I can't even receive forgiveness. Because there's just something about it, but it is by the Spirit and the Spirit's empowerment, the ways in which we can actually participate in this. And maybe a checkpoint for us this morning is the fruit of the Spirit. How do we know if the Spirit is actually doing a work in our life? Or there's a short list here in Galatians 5:22-23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. In your life right now, in the things that are not going the way you want them to, in the things that are by far tragic and terrible and are not the way that they are supposed to be, is the Spirit inside of you? Does it seem that even though things feel out of control, you're actually able to grow in self-control? This idea of forbearance, a foreign word for us often, but to actually withhold maybe something that is owed. To patiently endure what we might be experiencing ourselves in a relationship with others. This is a very quick way to ask, is the Spirit inside of me? Because I don't know about you, but I can't turn this stuff on. I can muster up energy for a week and say, I'm just really going to grit my teeth and push through this, and then I'm exhausted because I'm lacking peace, wholeness, everything to be made right. While your circumstances cannot change, you and I can continue to change. I would argue one of the greatest invitations from the scriptures and in life with Jesus. Because oftentimes, many times, most times, your circumstances won't change. But the hope is that you and I change. And is that not what gives hope to the world? To see a bunch of people that are in things that are just the worst, and yet they love. Yet they have this thing of forbearance inside of them. Oh, they just seem so kind. That doesn't even make sense. How can they be that kind when it seems that the world is pressing down upon their soul? there is a spirit inside of you for those that have professed their faith in a God who saves through Jesus. There's something that has been indwelled in you, a deposit that has been made that wants to do a great work in your heart and your mind and your soul. Eugene Peterson paraphrases this verse this way, but what happens when we live God's way? He brings gifts into our lives, much the same way that fruit appears in an orchard. Things like affection for others, exuberance about life, serenity. We develop a willingness to stick with things, a sense of compassion in the heart, and a conviction that a basic holiness permeates things and people. We find ourselves involved in loyal commitments, not needing to force our way in life, able to marshal and direct our energies wisely. Legalism is helpless in bringing this about. It only gets in the way. Among those who belong to Christ, everything connected with getting our own way and mindlessly responding to what everyone else calls necessities is killed off for good. It's crucified. I don't know about you, but it gives me an imagination for what's beautiful and good and right. That again, while the things you find yourself in may not and probably will not change, you can change. I can change by the Spirit in which has been given to you and I. Last one, an inscription. You need to go, go get your IQ tested if you pick this one up, because it would be really high. Inscription.
My Lord, my God.
It's up there. It's up there. Your IQ. That's good. I didn't pick it up first time I read it. Dominius et Deus. This would have been in the time of Emperor Domitian, who inscribed on the coin meant, my Lord, my God. Every coin that was used in that time would have the image of that current emperor on it. We have one that says, in God we trust. Their coins would be of their emperor, and essentially they would be named as Lord and God. The Pax Romana would be Rome's peace in this time. It would be the emperor's way of saying, I will bring peace to this earth. Now, what we know in scholarship and looking back, these were some of the most brutal people who have ever walked the face of the earth. Peace did not mean peace to everybody. Peace actually came through murder and destruction and complete brutality. And so in the face of Jesus walking into the room and saying, peace with you, we should do a series called The Politics of Christmas. This is completely in the face of the Roman Empire, completely objecting to the peace in which they promised to bring, the peace in which they say that they're going to offer their people. And he's saying, no, I bring peace. And so for Thomas's confession here of my Lord and my God, he is noticing and proclaiming that Jesus is my Lord and my God, not Domitian. There are things in your life right now that are promising you peace. There's a culture, a government, an entertainment system, a socioeconomic status. We could keep going. There are things in which are offering you peace that you and I can reach for at our fingertips over and over and over again. And I don't know about you, but over and over and over again, I still seem to be longing for peace. Where are you looking for peace this Christmas season? Where are you hoping in the promise of peace within reach? Because Jesus has entered to say that the only way that you will find peace is in me. The only way that you will experience peace is not because everything is going to be okay, but it's because you can be okay while everything's not okay because of me. because I have come to you as a gardener. I've come to you with holes in my hands and wounds on my side to say, I have actually overcome everything that you are experiencing that is death and destruction. And I am the master gardener with dirt underneath my fingertips who actually gets recognized as a gardener outside of his tomb. It's because he has entered into the earth to till the soil so that you and I can find life when it doesn't make sense to have life. Where are you proclaiming that your peace lies? Where are you looking for things just to magically be made right so that you can take a full breath? Unfortunately, I offer to you this morning that we will never take a full breath without the peace in which Jesus brings. I have tried. I continue to try. He has done something that only he can do. Where's your faith this morning in the circumstances in which you find yourself? I would offer that our invitation in this is that if you and I want to experience peace beyond our circumstance, the invitation is to place our faith beyond what we can see. If we actually want to experience peace, what seems to be true is it's directly connected to where we place our faith. What's your faith in right now? What are you hoping for that will just change everything and make it better? Where are you clenching your fist and gritting your teeth to make things the way in which they're supposed to be? And in which way are you standing in a locked room, terrified, overwhelmed, with so many questions and so many doubts, feeling like this does not make sense? And yet your faith is that there is a God who can walk through walls to meet you and say, peace be with you. This is what it looks like to live a life that is guided by the Spirit of God. That in every circumstance, when we feel locked in a room, we can pause and say, God, I'm in a room. The doors feel locked and the windows are closed. I don't see a way out. It feels like everything is closing in on this room. Would you meet me here? Would you just walk into this room with me and be? And will you breathe on me? Please take a breath, men. Like, will you breathe into my life right now so that I can experience a peace that I know I otherwise will not? This is after the fact, but Jesus foreshadowed this in John 16:33. He said that you will experience trouble in your life. You don't want to hear that from Jesus. You're going to. You will, you are. You have. But you can actually take hope. For I have overcome the world. I've overcome the things in which you and I fear. He's overcome the things in which gives us trepidation. And he overcomes the things in which we want to clench our fists and grit our teeth. He has conquered. Do you believe that? That means that everything that comes into our life, we can take with our hands and we can open up and say, God, will you breathe on me? Will you enter the room? Will you bring your peace? Because I can't. Some of us this morning, it might just be as simple as saying, God, can you breathe on me? Some of us, it might be, God, I don't know what to do with this. This is the worst thing in my life. Will you walk into the room and just be? Some of you may have come out of something hard, good news, bad news. You will experience something hard again. Are we people that can pause and just offer things to God and say, God, I can't make peace of this, will you? I honestly don't know what other practical things to do. I could give you a list of 100, but my concern is that we walk out of here doing none of them. And I think simply it's over and over again being people who pause, and when in hard times, we imagine a Jesus walking into the room over and over and over again. And then he says to us, peace be with you. And he grabs your hand, he puts his arm around you, whatever it is, and says, I know this is the worst. I know that the world is closing in around this room, but here I am. Take my Spirit, because you can keep changing no matter the circumstances in which you find yourself. And that is a hope in which the world is looking for, as the world longs for peace. Peace be with you this Christmas season. Peace be with you. May we be the carriers of that. I'm going to invite the worship team forward. Why don't we go ahead and stand? We're going to respond in song, and then we're going to have our adorable kids come up here and sing. And what I want to invite you to in this moment is to take whatever circumstance you find yourself in that is unwanted, however big, however small. Actually name something to God this morning that you are not at peace with, that feels as if it will never be at peace. And as we sing, as we take communion, which I'll explain in a second, can we just offer that to a God who has shown himself to move into the room and fill us with his spirit of peace, the spirit of wholeness? That's what we do each week at communion. There's 2 tables in the back. We take the cracker and we dip it in the juice. And the cracker is God's body broken for us, the one that was brutally beaten on his way to and on a cross, that then laid in a tomb so that you and I can be right with God. And the blood that was shed in that time is the thing that washes away the separation that you and I oftentimes choose and participate in. It separates from God's love, shame and guilt and fear and worry. And so at communion, we just offer that. And we take these things and we say, God, will you breathe? Will you bring your peace? Lastly, some of you are in situations that you feel like your own 2 feet just want to buckle. Our prayer team would love to pray with you. A short prayer, a hand on your shoulder, and just ask for God's peace to move into your life. Throughout the scriptures over and over again, one of the greatest encouragements is when people pray for each other. It seems that powerful things happen when people pray for one another. When you and I confess the things that aren't working in our life to someone else. You don't have to go that deep. You can walk up to one of the people in the back. They're going to have a prayer lanyard on, and you just say, I want to experience God's peace. You can say however much or little you want. They would love to place a hand on your shoulder and just bless you this season, that God's peace may be.